Good afternoon. Myself, Papa Rao. I'm having the experience of 8 years in gate field and teaching field. Today, I'm going to discuss operating system in gate. Coming to the operating system, it is having 8 to 10 marks in the gate weightage. So every year, we are minimum 8 marks we are getting from operating system. So it is having the high priority subject, one of the high priority subject in the gate. So coming to the syllabus, so we need to cover process scheduling and memory management and file management systems, process synchronization and deadlocks. So from these 5 concepts, we'll get the major gate questions. Coming to the operating system, there are 2 kind of questions we may get. One is theoretically, another one is problems. 40% of the questions are theory and remaining 60% we may get as a problematic questions. So most of the questions problematic, process scheduling, deadlocks and disk scheduling. So and coming to the memory management, page replacement and all these things, we'll get the different kind of questions. So we'll discuss in the coming the classes, so which is having the highest priority and what are the topics we need to cover from each process scheduling and process synchronization and the deadlocks and coming to the memory management and file management. So coming to the operating system or introduction to the operating system. So operating system is an interface between user and computer. So we all know this definition. This is the interface between the user and computer. So I change this definition as it is the manager and resource allocator. So I call it as manager and resource allocator. So these are the 2 things done by the operating system. So what it manages and what are the resources it allocates. Coming to the resources, there are different kind of resources are there. That may be hardware or software. Coming to the hardware, printer and scanner, these are the some kind of resources. And these resources, suppose in the multi-processing system or multi-programming environment or in the shared time-sharing environment, so operating system allocates the resource to the particular process or particular user. So that's why we are calling this one as resource allocator. Coming to the manager, so it manages memory, it manages process, and it manages files, and it provides security. So from these things we are calling, or I am calling this one as manager, because it manages the memory, which process it has to allocate the memory, and from which process it has to deallocate the memory, and creation of the process and scheduling the process or preempting the process, and all these things are done by the operating system only. So files to the coming to the files, also creating the files and deleting the files and different kind of modifications, renaming and all these things are also done by the operating system only. And for providing security also we are using the operating system. For that purpose it acts like as a manager. So finally I conclude my definition for operating system as it is an interface between the user and computer by managing and by allocating the resources to different process or for the users. So this is the definition for the operating system. So why this operating system? Suppose if there is no operating system, so what are the difficulties? Suppose we are writing the C programs and we are compiling our C or Java or any kind of programs, and we are compiling those programs. So after that, if there is no errors in that program, we are running that program and we are getting some results with that program. So for example, I want to take one function from the C programming, that is a printf function. We all know this. So this is the output function. So suppose if you want to display anything, we are using printf function as an output function. So printf function displays the data which we want to display. Suppose here operating system provides the functionality for the printf. That means all the code of the printf function is included in the operating system. That's why we are getting the results without writing any kind of code for the printf. Suppose if there is no printf function in the operating system, because in operating system we are having the function write for executing the function printf. Suppose if there is no operating system, we need to write a code for print the data also, or to display the data also, because printf function itself display the data. No need to write the code for the printf function here, because in an operating system we are having the write call. So with the help of this write call, printf executing. Suppose if there is no operating system, we need to write the code to display the data. So it is very difficult for every time writing the code to display the data, to give the input, and all these things. It is very difficult. So for that purpose only, we are using the system calls. So to reduce our task. So in that way, I can say that the operating system helps us to do our work with a convenient manner. So that's why I'm telling the one of the goal of the operating system is convenience. So to make the convenience of the user, so we are using the operating system. And one more thing, for providing the efficiency. Suppose if we want to execute the program, so for the purpose there are different kind of operating systems are there: multi-programming operating system, multi-processing operating system, time-sharing operating system, real-time operating system, batch processing operating system. These are the different kind of operating systems. Coming to the first initial operating system, that is batch processing operating system. In the batch processing operating system, suppose if we want to execute the program, so every user has to give their job to the one leader or one system. So that system groups them all, and the related processes are executed as a group, and that provides the results after execution of that one. So that means, suppose there is a processor or processor here, user 1, user 2, user 3. So these three users wants to execute the programs. They gave their jobs to the processor and they left. After executing these three jobs, processor produces the results. But present scenario, we need to interact with the processor to execute the jobs, to give an IO. IO means input or output. So for that purpose, suppose if we want to give anything in the anything as an input at the time of executing the program or process, so it is difficult with the help of batch processing operating system, because there is no intervention or interference between the user and processor in the batch operating system. So for that purpose, it is very difficult, but it is very simple to execute the programs. But interaction, there is no interaction between the user and the processor in the batch operating system. So this is the one kind of operating system. Coming to the multi-programming operating system. So here we may interact with processor. So and more than one process may be executed simultaneously. For example, P1 is the process, present it is executing. After some time, P1 needs an IO. So now the processor is idle because it requires an IO. So that's why the processor is idle. So for that purpose, at the time of processor is idle, so another process P2 may execute. At the time of P1 went to an waiting state for an IO, we may allocate P2 to the processor. So we can call this kind of environment as preemption. Preemption means without completion of execution of the process, we allows another process to execute. So that means the preemption. So it is possible in the multi-programming environment. Coming to the batch operating system, it is not possible. Coming to the multi-programming environment, it is possible. So that's why I am giving that one statement as it is for the efficiency. So here I am not allowing the processor to be an idle. That's why the efficiency of the processor is increases. So finally, the goals or the importance of the operating system is for providing the convenience to the user and to increase the efficiency by providing the multi-processing environment and multi-programming environment or time sharing environment, and all these different kind of things, it provides the efficiency. So finally, the definition of the operating system is an interface between the user and computer. So user can get the convenience with the help of operating system. He can compute, he can interact with computer, as well as in the same manner the efficiency also increases with the help of operating system. So this is the brief introduction and the definition of the operating system. And coming to the types of an operating system, there are different kind of types, or different types are there. One is batch operating system, another one is multi-programming operating system, and I can call it also multitasking operating system. So there is a slight difference between this. So some textbooks are both are saying both are same, and some textbooks give the small difference between these two, multitasking and multi-programming. So there is a only slight difference between slight difference is there, but we can call these two are same, multi-programming and multitasking. And third one is multi-processing operating system, and fourth one is time sharing operating system, and fifth one is real-time operating system. These are the different kind of operating systems. First one is batch operating system. Coming to the batch operating system, so I already discussed about this one. So here only one processor takes multiple number of jobs at one time and groups them as a related jobs and executes them all and provides the result. So here the disadvantage or the problem is there is no interaction between the processor and the user. Suppose user wants to give anything as an input at the time of executing the process, it is not possible. So that is the major problem with batch operating system. To overcome that problem, another operating system is multi-programming or multitasking. So in this operating system, multi-programming, more than one program can execute simultaneously. So there are two different kind of timers are there. One is a CPU time, another one is the IO time. CPU time means when process is executing, so the required time is CPU time. And another one is IO bound. When a process needs an IO, that means input or output or any some other resource. So that kind of time is called as IO bound time. For example, there are two processes. P1 process is there and P2 process is there. Currently, P1 process is executing. After some milliseconds or some time, that needs an IO. So at that time, that moves from running state to waiting state. At that time, CPU is idle. So that means the efficiency of the CPU is less. To overcome that problem in multi-programming environment, there is another name that is preemption. So preemption means it allows another process without completing the presently executing process or presently running process. This environment or this kind of situation is called as preemption. So P1 is went to wait state for an IO. At that time, CPU executes another process that may be a P2 or P3 or something else. So in this environment or in this situation, I'm calling this one as multi-programming operating system or multitasking operating system. So this is another kind of operating system. And third one is multiprocessing. Multiprocessing operating system. So multiprocessing means in this more than one process execute the program. So with this, the throughput is more. Coming to the batch operating system, there is no interaction and a time consuming process. And coming to the second one, multi-programming. So CPU efficiency increased compared to batch operating system. So, and coming to the multi-processing system, it executes more process, a single job or different kind of jobs. With this, the throughput of the system is more. Another one is fourth one, time sharing operating system. So coming to the time sharing operating system, there is one example. For example, one process entered into the CPU and it is executing, but it takes high time to complete the task. But some other processors are waiting at the ready state with having small burst times or execution times. So the response to get those process is more to overcome this kind of situations. So we are having another operating system that is called time sharing operating system. In this type of operating system, each process gets the CPU or processor in the stipulated amount of time or some quantum in, in the intervals of some quantum time. So with this, the response time is more, and sorry, the response time is less, and automatically the every process gets responded or submitted within the particular amount of time. So for that purpose, we are using the time sharing operating systems. So we will get the much knowledge and the good clarity at the time of solving the problems at the CPU scheduling about multitasking and time sharing. So what are the different kind of problems allows the time sharing, and what are the problems allows multi-programming and all these things. And next one is real-time operating system. This one is used in the robotics and military and all the the different very important resource situations. We use the real-time operating system. So the real-time operating system is present days we are using different type of technologies also. So it is having the wide projects. So this is about different kind of operating system. We may not get the gate question on these types, but just to get the knowledge, so we discussed about the different type of operating systems. So this is about the brief introduction about an operating system. So coming to the our syllabus, so we need to start with, or I am going to start with process. Process means a program which is in execution. We all know about this definition. So what is the difference between program and process? So program means program is not, process is nothing but a program, but when it is in the execution, we are calling that one as process. So we can also differentiate the program and process in another way also. Program which is placed at the secondary memory, and process which is placed at the primary memory. We all know about this thing. So that is, so we suppose we want to execute any program. First, we need to place that program in the primary memory or secondary memory. In that concern also, we can specify the program and process. Coming to the process, we have to discuss process states. There are different kind of states are there. That is new, ready, running, terminate, wait, suspended, wait, and suspended, ready. So these are the different kind of states of the process. After creating the process, it may be in the any one of the state. So there is a state new, there is a state with the name ready, running, terminate, wait, suspended wait, and suspended ready. For this, we can easily understand with the help of diagram. We can call that one as process state diagram. So first one is new. When one process is created, that is at the state new. When one process is created, so that is placed at the state new. After that, it moves from new state to ready state. So the transition is called as admitted. So when the process is created, it is at the new state. After that process is admitted, that means the transition is called as admitted. It moves from new state to ready state. Here the difference is, at the time of new state, the process is in the secondary memory, and when it moves from new state to the ready state, it moves to the secondary memory to the primary memory. And that means in the new state, it will be in the secondary memory. At the time of or at ready state, it will be in the primary memory. So this is also another difference. So ready state means it is ready to execute. It is ready to execute and waiting for the CPU, because CPU may be executing another process. So at that time, it is at the ready state. It is in the ready queue. So after that, it moves to the running state. So it is moving from ready to running state. I can call it as dispatch or schedule. When CPU is idle or CPU completes the execution of the other process, it takes the process from the ready state to the running state. So that means it executes that, it is going to execute that process. So first one, it starts at new state. At the time of new state, it is in the secondary memory, and after that it is admitted. The transition is called as admitted. That transition moved to ready state. At the ready state, it is ready for waiting, but sorry, it is ready to wait to execute, but waiting for the CPU. So after CPU allocation, that transaction is called as dispatch or schedule. It is moved to the running state. Running state means present executing process placed or at the running state. After completion of the running, it is moved to the R state, that is called as terminate. So terminate means the transition is finished. So if it is finished, it moved to the terminate state. So these four states are mandatory for every process: new, ready, running, and terminate. So these are the four states are mandatory for every process. So we may get a theoretical question in the GATE or some competitive exams like, so how many number of processes minimum required to execute a process? That means minimum 4 states are required. Minimum 4 states are required. So these are the 4 different states that minimally required. Suppose in the multi-programming operating system, suppose when one process is executing, it requires an IO. It moved to the running state to the waiting state. So because of an IO wait. So this is also another state, that is waiting state. The waiting state is from running to wait, because if any process requires an input or output or some resource, so that is the state wait. After completion of an IO, it moves from waiting state to again ready state. After completion of IO, it moves from wait state to ready state. So this is another environment. So here new state is at running, new state is at secondary memory, ready, running, and wait. These three are at primary memory only. That means if any process is in the ready state, or if any process is in the running state, or if any process in the waiting state, that is in the primary memory only. So, and one more question. Suppose in the preemption case, so if any process is executing, but another process came with high priority. For example, in the normal situations, we may see this kind of situations. Suppose we are waiting at the traffic signal. So next they have to give the signal for us, but because another convoy came, that may be a MLA or PM or CM, so without giving the permission to us, or by stopping us, it gives the priority to the convoy that which come another side. So like that only here also sometimes, so high priority process may come and wait at the ready state. At that time, we need to allocate the high priority process to the CPU, and we need to stop the process which is executing at that particular time. So this kind of transition is called as interrupt, because here we are interrupting the running process or executing process and moving that process to the ready state and giving the or dispatching or scheduling the high priority process from ready state to running state. So here ready state is there, sorry, new state is there. After admitting transition, it is moving to the ready state. Ready state means the process is ready to execute and waiting for the CPU. When the CPU gets idle or completes the executing the time that executing process, it allocates to the CPU. That means it moved to the running state. After successful or normal completion with the transition of finished, so it moved to the terminate or abort also. We can also call it as abort. So this is the normal scenario. So coming to the preemption scenario. Preemption means, so when one process is executing and another process is waiting, which is having the high priority at the ready state. In that situation, we need to interrupt the executing process and giving the high prioritized process to the CPU. So here this transition, interrupt transition and dispatch are executed. Suppose when one process is executing at the running and after some time it requires an IO, that process moves from running state to waiting state, and after completion of that IO, it moves from waiting state to ready state again. And again, when the CPU gets idle or completion of the executing process, it assigns that IO completion process to the CPU. So this is the normal and normal scenario of execution of the process at the different states. Along with these states, we are having two more states. Those are suspended wait and suspended ready. So what is the difference between suspended wait and suspended ready, and what is the need of these two states? For example, so I already specified ready state, running state and waiting state. The processes which are in these states are in the primary memory. For example, one process came, it is having the highest priority, but there is no space in the primary memory. At that time, we may send the process in the waiting state to the another state, that is suspended wait. That means it is moving the data or process from primary memory to the secondary memory. By doing this, we can free the memory of the primary memory and allocate the process which is having the highest priority. That means the primary memory don't have the space to allocate the highest prioritized process. At that time, it is better to send the process which is at waiting state, which is waiting for an IO, to the suspended wait. So suspended wait state means it is in the secondary memory. So by doing this, we are freeing the primary memory or main memory. So by doing this, we can execute the high prioritized process. After completion of this IO, it moves to the waiting state. Again, it moves to the waiting state. And next one is, suppose another state, that is suspended ready. The importance of this state is, for example, some processors are at ready state, and one new process came with high priority. So at that time, we need to free the process which are at the ready state. So for that purpose, we are using suspended ready. So and that means here also we are moving the process from primary memory to the secondary memory. So that means suspended ready also the state of the secondary memory. After the ready state or the primary memory gets a free space, it moves from secondary memory to the or suspended ready state to the ready state. That means resume. Here we can call the transition as suspended. So these are the different kind of states of the process. Any process may place at any one of the state. So normally we need minimum 4 states. They are new, ready, running, and terminate. So these are the in the normal case. And in the different scenarios, we are using different states. That is wait. So wait means when IO is required or IO wait. So after completion of that IO wait, we are sending this to the ready state. And it is waiting for an IO, and we need space in the primary memory. At that time, we are moving the process from the waiting state to the suspended wait state. So suspended wait state must means the secondary memory. After completion of this task, it moves to the again to wait state, and from here to it is ready state. Or sometimes it may be suspended ready after completion of IO. Here the situation is IO is completed. IO is completed. IO is completed, wait for the ready state or wait for the executor. So at that time it moves to the suspended ready, and from suspended ready to the ready state. So this is the different kind of states of the process. So here we need to remember at what state the process is, and at that time or at that particular state, is it in the primary memory or in the secondary memory. So from this concept, we may get the gate questions, and previously asked one gate question from this concept. So that is 1 minute, sir. The process state transition diagram is given and some options are given. So with these options, we have to give the answer for the given question. Thank you. The question is, sorry. This is the state of terminate. And this is the state of running. So this is the one of the question previously asked gate question, sir. So, and this is ready state. This is new. This is blocked. Here, after successful running, it moves to the terminate, and here, when it allocates the memory in the primary memory, it moves from new state to the ready state, and when a CPU is allocated, it moves from ready to running, and when the high prioritized process came, it moves from running to the ready again. So, and sometimes it may be blocked from the ready state to blocked, or from running state to blocked. So this is the question given. Blocked means we can also call it as waiting state. Blocked or wait state. So this is the diagram given, and the options are option A, batch operating system. Batch OS. Option A, batch OS. And option B, OS with preemptive scheduler. OS with preemption. Sorry. OS with preemptive scheduler. And option C, OS with non-preemptive scheduler. OS with non-preemptive scheduler. And option D, uni-programmed operating system. Uni-programmed OS. So this is the question, sir, previously asked. The diagram is given, and with this diagram, we have to understand the statement. Is it a batch operating system, or preemptive scheduling operating system, or non-preemptive scheduling operating system, or uni-programmed operating system? So okay, good. Previously we discussed what is the batch operating system. Batch operating system means there is no interaction between the user and the processor. That means here some process came with high priority. It is moving from high priority to the, ready to the running state, and the running process is moving to the ready state. So that means preemption is having in this state diagram. And one more thing, when one process is running, when IO came, it is moving to the IO. And suppose primary memory is not sufficient, at that time it is moving to the blocked state or suspended state. So that means here the interaction is available, so we can say that it is not batch operating system. So in the batch operating system, there is no interaction, so we have to give the process, so the system executes one by one by making them as a groups. So there is no preemption, but here we clearly see the preemption. So preemption means when executing one process, it stops that execution and gives the CPU to the another process which is having the highest priority. So for that purpose, we can say that this is not a batch operating system. So coming to the option C, so I will discuss option B later. Coming to the option C, OS with non-preemption. Here itself, we are having the meaning. Here, when one process is running, it stops that execution and moving that process to the ready state and taking the new process from the ready state. So that means it is using the concept of preemption. That's why only it is stopping the execution of the one process and giving the execution environment to the another process. So it is also uses the preemption. So another option, non-preemption, is also not correct option. So that's why batch operating system is not a correct option, and operating system with non-preemption. Non-preemption means until completion of the process execution, it should not allow another process to execute. So that is called as non-preemptive scheduling. So but it is allowing the other process to execute when it is executing the one process. So for that purpose, it is the preemptive scheduling. So coming to the uni-programmed operating system. Uni-programmed means only single program. But here we clearly sees the multi-programming environment. When one program came, it stops the execution for an IO, so that moves to the blocked state. If it is not an multi-programming environment, no need to send running to blocked or ready to blocked or running to ready or ready to running. So only one process is there, that program is executed in the running state and moved after completion of that to the terminate. So no need of blocked or no need of running to ready. So in this situation, we can say that it is not the uni-programmed operating system, it is the multi-programmed operating system. So option D is also not correct. Option A is not correct. Option D also not correct. And option C is also not correct. Coming to the option B. So here an operating system with preemption. Preemption means, so when one process is executing, suppose it is going for an IO, or if any high prioritized process came, it stops the execution of the current executing program and gives the priority to the another program which may having highest priority or another program. So that environment is called as preemption or preemptive OS. So that is called operating system with the preemption. So finally, the option B is correct, sir. So this is the one of the question previously asked in the GATE from the process state diagram. So this is about process states, and the questions may ask like this. So just I will share the one minute, sorry. After completion of my class, I will share these documents, sir, to you. So this is the process state diagram in operating system, what I try to draw. So you may be, if you may feel difficult to understand when I'm drawing, so you can see once again, new state, ready state, running, and terminate. These four states are the mandatory states. So the remaining states are wait or block state and suspended wait and suspended ready. So these are the different states. We may also add to the process state diagram in the different kind of situations. So when one process is at the new state, that may be that is at the secondary memory. When one process is ready state, so that is at the primary memory. And when the CPU is gets idle, So one process is scheduled or dispatched. This transition is called as scheduling or dispatching. From new state to ready state, we can call the transition as admitted. And after completion of the running or finishing the task, it moved to the state that is called as terminate. So this is the normal situation and very simple situation. And coming to the multi-programming environment, so sometimes that may be go for IO wait. At that time, it takes another process. So here, one process, suppose P1 process, move for an IO from running state to the wait state. At the time, ready state CPU takes the another process from the ready state. Or in this some situations, high priority process came and waiting at the ready state. In that situation also, when currently running executing process is moved to the ready state, and other process is allocated to the CPU. So this is also another. So here we are interrupting the process based on the priority or time quantum. So next one is time quantum means in the previous when I'm discussing time sharing operating system, so it gives the particular stipulated time for every process like that I told you. So here, suppose P1 executes 3 milliseconds. After that, it gives the time to the P2, and so after that P3, P4, like that, so on. So every process gets the stipulated amount of time. We can call that one as time quantum. After completion of time quantum, another process allocates the CPU. After completion of that time quantum for that process, it allocates another one. So at that time, these executing processes are moved to the ready state. Another one I told you. So suppose in the primary memory there is no space and high prioritized process came. At that time, from ready state to we are suspending one process and sending to the state that is called as suspended ready. So suspended ready is a secondary memory. So that's why here we can free the primary memory and allocates the high prioritized process. After completion of that one, or when the primary memory gets freed, so the process which is at the suspended ready, it moved to the ready state. And coming to the wait block, so wait or block. So here also in the same situation, there is no sufficient memory in the primary memory. So at that time, it is better to choose suspend the process which is at the wait, because it is already waiting for the some other event, some other IO. So at that time, it is not required place at the primary memory. So for that purpose, it is better to send it to the suspended wait. Suspended wait is also secondary memory. After completion of suspended wait or after completion of an IO, it is moved to the when primary memory gets free and it is not IO is not completed. At that time, again it moved to the wait. Suppose the primary memory gets free, but IO completed. At that time, it moves from suspended wait to suspended ready set. So this is the state diagram. So here for every state, what it is doing, I try to write a definition for the what is the run state, what is the terminate state, what is the block, or what is the wait, and what is the suspended ready, and what is the suspended wait, like that. So here we are having some important points. These are categorized some 4 different points. Just I will mention those 4 points. What is the requirement of those? So a process necessarily goes through minimum number of 4 states. So already I explained you. So it requires any state, any process must process or must go through 4 states. They are new, ready, run, and terminate. These are the 4 different states that must go through every process. So the states of new, ready, run, and terminate states are there. However, the process requires an IO operation. Suppose that requires an IO operation, the minimum number of states are 5. Suppose if it is not requires an IO, so the minimum number of states are 4. So in the question, you have to check is IO operation is required or not. Suppose IO operation is required, the minimum number of states are 5. Suppose IO operation is not required, the minimum number of states are only 7. And the second one, single process can execute only one process at a time. So CPU with one process can execute only one process at a time, sir. Suppose a multi-process environment, if we are having n number of processes, we can execute n number of process simultaneously. And so already we discussed at the time of new state, the memory is secondary memory. Ready state, run state, and wait state, that is at the main memory. And at the time of suspended wait state and suspended ready state, that is secondary memory. So point. So this is also having the much prioritized, sir. Moving process from wait state to suspended wait state is better alternative. We want to free the primary memory to give the chance to the another process or to execute the running process. Anything, any situation. It is better to send the process from wait state to suspended wait, because wait state means the process is waiting for an event IO. So at that time, it cannot execute. For that purpose, it is already waiting for the process. So it needs some more time. At that time, it is better to send that process from wait state to suspended wait state. That means primary memory to secondary memory. For example, if we send the process which is at the ready state, it is not that much better alternative or better idea, because there may be a chance to execute the process which is at the ready state because it is ready for execution. But the process is at the waiting state is not ready to execute because it is waiting for an IO. So for that purpose, it is better alternative to send a process which is at the ready state to the wait state to the suspended wait. So by doing this, we can allocate the memory for the required process, as well as no need to stop any process which is ready to execute. So those points I covered in the next steps. Moving process with lower priority from ready state to the suspended ready. Suppose that is having the low priority, we can send it to the from ready to the suspended ready. Moving process with low priority from wait state to the suspended wait. These are the two chances are there. But moving process wait from wait state to suspended wait state is a better alternative, because that process which is already in the waited has some blocked resource. The resources which is blocked by the another process which is waiting for that process. Until it gets that blocked resource, it cannot execute. So the better alternative is sending the process which is in the waiting state to the suspended wait. So that is the thing, sir. So it may be asked in the theoretical, maybe may not be in the gate question, but we are having more number of competitive exams are there. So coming to the NIC, National Informatics Center. So in that examination previously, this question is asked, sir. So that is also one of the important examination only, and the central government examination. So some scientist post is there. So in that criteria, they asked this question. For the purpose only, I clearly mentioned this point. So maybe ask some theoretical question like that. They may be asked, and you may get the question from this side. So suppose they maybe give the some process state. So at that particular state, so the process is in the in which memory, is in the secondary memory or in the primary memory, and how many minimum number of states must go through. Every process must goes through minimum number of states for if there is no IO operation. If there is an IO operation, it must go through minimum 5 states. And one more question, it is already very simple. That is, if it is a uniprocess system, that means a single process system, it executes only one process at a time. Suppose if it is a multi-process system, it can execute n number of processes. Suppose if there are n number of processors. So that is the very simple thing only. So this is about process states and different kind of states and different kind of transitions. So you may get the question from the process states, like already in the previous section I discussed one question like that. You may get the questions from the process state diagram. So I will share it after completion of my class, sir. Madam, excuse me.
Yes, sir.
Madam, is my voice and everything is okay, madam? Is there any difficulty?
Yeah, clear. I think so. Subject content I couldn't understand because basically I'm a civil engineer. Students can answer this question.
Yeah. Please, anyone can answer. Please unmute and answer. Any one of the persons.
Nikita, okay na? Content okay na? Please give some feedback.
Yeah, you can post in chat box also. If there is any difficulty to understand or my voice or anything, you please post in the chat box or please respond.
My opinion, voice is clear, sir. Clear voice. Your writing also very clear.
Yeah, ma'am. Thank you.
Subject they have to tell.
Ma'am, please respond one. Anyone?
No doubt, sir.
Ma'am, please.
Yeah, they are telling no doubt. No doubt,
Okay.
It's okay.
Okay. I will continue my class. Thank you, ma'am. So up to now, I have discussed just the introduction of the operating system as well as the state diagram of the process state diagram and how to get the questions from the process state diagram. Suppose after completion of all these concepts, I will discuss the previously asked questions from the scheduling. Every question I will discuss, sir. And now I am going to discuss different kind of timers of the process state diagram or process scheduling. So we are having different times. One is arrival time, burst time, waiting time, and turn around time, response time. Like this, we are having different kind of timers. So I will just share the topic and I will discuss the timers. After completion of this topic, we will go for problems. Yeah, various timers related to the process. So the different timers are there. So you can see those: arrival time, waiting time, response time, burst time, completion time, and turn around time. So coming to the arrival time, which process enters into the ready queue or ready state, we can say that is the arrival time. That means if any process is at the ready state, so that is the arrival time of that process. A particular we can call the as the arrival time. And next, waiting time. Waiting time means the process came to the ready state or ready queue and which is waiting for the get the CPU. So that means one process came to the ready queue and waiting for the CPU. At the time of 5 it came, and until the time of 10 it is in the ready state only. So that means 10 minus 5, so that is 5 seconds is the waiting time of that process. So suppose if you are unable to understand this point, so you can easily understand at the time of doing the problems. Don't worry. So just if it is if you are able to get the point, you please get it. So that means a process came to the ready queue and waiting for the CPU. That means we may get more than one process at the ready queue. The process which are ready for execution are placed at the ready queue. So after they came to ready queue and waiting for the allocation of CPU. So because CPU allocates at a time one process only. So if it is a multiple number of process, so they may be execute multiple number of process. But every process is also like as a CPU only. So for that purpose, here a process may wait for some time, may be required to wait for some time to get the CPU. So that time is called as waiting time. Here there is a formula, that is turnaround time minus burst time. So you don't know about the turnaround time. So you don't know about the burst time till now, because I have discussed only the two topics. So that is arrival time and waiting time only. So you will get this after some explanation. What is the burst time? What is the turnaround time? Response time. Response time means starting or the first time after entering to the ready queue. For example, one process entered to the ready queue and waiting for the CPU, and CPU is allocated to that process. After allocating that process, sometimes it may be again moved to the ready queue, because if any high prioritized process came, so at that time it may be moved from running to the ready state without completion of that process. Here the process is not completed that execution, but it gets the response from the CPU. So the first time from ready state to the running state, it moved. So that time is called as response time. So you can get it first time which the process gets the CPU minus arrival time. So that process, when it came to the ready queue, and we need to deduct that time from the first time it gets the CPU. Suppose the first time it gets the CPU is 7 and the arrival time is 5. So we need to deduct or subtract 5 minus 7. So that is 2. The response time of that particular process is 2. Suppose if you didn't get, please don't get bothered, sir. So I will explain you at the time of doing the problems. You will definitely clearly understand the timers. Next, burst time. So you can also call it as execution time or running time. So the amount of time CPU required for that process to execute. For any process wants to execute that requires the CPU time, that particular time is called as burst time, running time, or executing time. So this is called as burst time. Another one is completion time. So completion time means after execution completes, it exits from running state to the terminated state. So that particular point of time is called as completion time, because the burst time what it has is completed. So next one is turn around time. So you may get the questions from this concept. Turn around time. Turn around time means the total amount of time spent by the process in the CPU or the system is called as turn around time. So we are having the formula, a simple formula for this, that is burst time, waiting time. Burst time, we know that the amount of time the CPU requires, the process requires the CPU, and waiting time means when it came to the ready state and it waits for the CPU. The waiting time, by adding the waiting time as well as the burst time, we can get the turnaround time. or also we are having the another formula, that is completion time minus arrival time. So with this also we can calculate the turnaround time. So these are the different timers. One is arrival time. Arrival time means the first time the processor enter into the ready state is called as, the particular time is called as arrival time. And next one is waiting time. Waiting time means it came to the ready state and waiting for the CPU. From the starting point of the entering into the ready state, that is the arrival time. From that onwards, it is waiting for the CPU. Yeah. Waiting time means, so from the time of arriving to the time to allocate the CPU is called as waiting time, sir. Response time means the first time the process enters from ready state to the CPU, that time is called as response time, because that process gets the response from the CPU. So the arrival time, the time which the first get into the CPU minus arrival time, you can get the response time. So that is the formula. So burst time means the time required to execute the total process is called as burst time. You can also call it as execution time as well as running time. Completion time means when the completion of the process, it moves from running state to the terminate state. So that particular time is called as completion time. You can also call it as exit time. And turnaround time is burst time plus waiting time, or completion time minus arrival time. So these are the formulas, and we can easily calculate these things with the help of Gantt chart. So here some important notes, sir. We have considered the process does not require an IO operation. Here we didn't discuss about an IO operation. That means in the previously I discussed there are two different kind of timers. One is the CPU time as well as the IO time. CPU time means the time required to execute the process is called as the CPU time. The IO time means when the process requires any event or any IO, that time is called as IO bound or IO time. When process is present in the system, it will be either waiting for CPU in the ready state, or it will be in the executing on the CPU. So that is the thing, because here there is no IO. If there is no IO, there is no waiting state. So for that purpose, it may be in the ready state or it may be in the running state. Suppose if any process is present in the system, suppose after completion of the process, it moved to the termination. Termination means it is not present in the primary memory or it is not present in the secondary memory. So finally, I'm going to conclude this concept as, without an IO operation, the minimum states are 4. That is new, ready, running, and terminator. Terminate means no need of secondary memory, no need of primary memory, because it is completed, it move on. So next one is new state. That means it is in the secondary memory. So we are not considering that in the primary memory. That's why here I am specifying, if any process present in the system, that means in the primary memory, that must be in the ready state for waiting the CPU or executing with the CPU. So that must be in the running state. So this is the point we have to remember, without an IO operation. Without an IO operation. So these are the different timers for the process when executing. So process state diagram completed, and coming to the different timers related to the every process may have these all timers: arrival time, waiting time, response time, burst time, completion time, and turnaround time. For every process, we may calculate all these different kind of timers. So with all these things, to improve the efficiency of the system or processor, and to efficiently use of the system, and to increase the throughput and to decrease the waiting time, so we are having multiple number of scheduling algorithms. So those multiple number of scheduling algorithms are divided into two types. One is preemptive scheduling algorithm, another one is non preemptive scheduling algorithm. So here we are having two kind of scheduling algorithms. The requirement is to increase the throughput, to increase the efficiency, and to decrease the waiting time, and to decrease the response time. So to do all these things, we are having many kind of scheduling algorithms are there. So here we are categorizing those scheduling algorithms as non-preemptive scheduling algorithms and preemptive scheduling algorithms. Coming to the non-preemptive scheduling algorithms, one is FCFS, first come, first serve, or first in, first out. And second one is SJF, shortest job first, shortest job first, which is having the shortest burst time must execute the first. So that is called as shortest job first algorithm. Another one is non-preemptive priority scheduling algorithm. In the priority scheduling algorithm, we are having the preemptive priority scheduling algorithm as well as non-preemptive priority scheduling algorithm. These three comes under non-preemptive scheduling algorithms. Non-preemptive scheduling algorithms means when process is executing, it does not allow other process to execute until the completion of the executing process. When one process is executing, the processor does not allow another process to execute. So that is non-preemptive scheduling algorithms. Coming to the preemptive scheduling algorithms, when one process is executing, if another process came with high priority, it allows the process which is having the high priority by stopping the current executing process. Or one more. And one more thing is, suppose if one process is went for an IO wait. So in this situation, the CPU is waiting for, the CPU is idle. So to increase the efficiency of the CPU, so another process which is at the ready state is allocated to the running state or CPU. So in these two situations, we are allocating the other process without completing the execution of the current process. This scenario is called as preemptive scheduling. So I think I think it is clear. So non-preemptive means it does not allow other process to execute in the middle of the execution. But coming to the preemptive, it may allow other process to execute in the middle of the execution of the one process. In the situations are high prioritized process, and the situations are when one process went for IO wait. So in these situations, to increase the efficiency of the CPU, so we may use the preemptive scheduling. So coming to the preemptive scheduling, so there are different kind of preemptive scheduling algorithms are there. One is SRTF, shortest remaining time first. Another one is round robin scheduling algorithm. So this is also called as time sharing scheduling algorithm, because there is a quantum time. So every scheduling algorithm must get the response after a stipulated amount of time or quantum amount of time. So another one is preemptive priority scheduling algorithm. Here non-preemptive scheduling non-preemptive priority scheduling algorithm comes under non-preemptive scheduling, and preemptive priority scheduling algorithm comes under preemptive scheduling algorithm. So these 6 scheduling algorithms are the basic scheduling algorithms. Along with this, we are having different kind of scheduling algorithms. We'll discuss and what are the differentiations are there, and what are the different requirements are there. In those requirements, why we are using them. The basic scheduling algorithms are these. One is first come first serve, SJF, shortest job first scheduling algorithm, and a non-preemptive algorithm, non-preemptive priority scheduling algorithm. So these 3 are comes under non-preemptive. That means until completing the one process, it does not allows another process to execute, or the middle of the execution, that does not allow any other process to execute until completing the current executing process. That is called as non-preemptive, and the types are FCFS, SJF, and non-preemptive priority scheduling. Comes to the preemptive, it allows other process in the middle of the execution of the current process. What are the situations it allows, and what are the requirements it allows? Because the allowed process may having highest priority, or one process moved to the an IO and CPU is idle. To increase the efficiency of the CPU, it allows other process to execute at the time of one process moved to the an IO wait. So these are the different kind of scheduling algorithms. So non-preemptive scheduling algorithm and preemptive scheduling algorithm. So based on the preemption and non-preemption, they are categorized as 2 types. So for this class, I will discuss the non-preemptive scheduling algorithms. Yes, sir. Coming to the FCFS. Sorry. FCFS. The full form is first come, first serve. That means there are many processes which may enter into the ready state. So what is the process next to execute is what is the process which comes first into the ready queue. For example, all the processors P1, P2, P3. So these are the different kind of process. So initially at the time of 0 time, it came into the ready queue. At the time of 3, it came arrived into the ready queue. And at the time of 4, the process P3 enter into the ready queue. So 0, 3, 4 are the arrival times of P1, P2, P3. Arrival time means the process which is entered into the ready queue is called as arrival time. At the time of 0, first enter the P1. So in case of FCFS, first we need to execute P1. After that, we need to execute P2, because when the P1 is executing, maybe P2 entered into the ready queue, because here I didn't give the any kind of execution times or burst times. For example, the burst time of P1 is 4, the burst time of P2 is 5.
Sharon, good evening now. Good evening. I chala laptop studying and enjoying now.
Madam, madam,
Yes,
any
sir.
problem, madam? Madam, any problem, madam? Hello, madam.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Tell me, sir.
Is there any problem, madam?
Sorry. Okay.
Actually, I'm getting the. Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Yes, sorry, sir. Sorry. Now we are discussing first come first serve. So coming to the first come first serve scheduling algorithm, here I took 3 processes. One is P1. It arrived at the time of 0, and another process P2. It arrived at the time of 3. So that means when P1 is executing, so P2 arrived, and when P1 is executing, P3 also arrived at the time of 4. So, but first P1 came, so I am giving the chance to the P1 to execute. So after completion of the P1 execution, I am giving the chance to the P2, because the next entered process into the ready queue is P2. So here I am using the first come first serve. So I am giving the chance to the P2. After completion of that, so I am giving the chance to the P3. So this is the order of the execution order of the processes with the help of first come first serve scheduling algorithm. So this is the concept. So but here the question is, what is the waiting time of P1, what is the waiting time of P2, what is the waiting time of P3, or what is the response time of P1, or what is the response time of P2, or what is the response time of P3, or else what is the turn around time of P1, or what is the turn around time of P2, or what is the turn around time of P3. So these are the kind of questions we may get. Our average turnaround time, our total turnaround time, our average waiting time, our average waiting time, or waiting time of particular process, or total waiting time. So these are the questions we may get. So to solve all those things, we can construct the diagram or Gantt chart. So Gantt chart is nothing but a graphical representation of the execution of the process. Process execution is represented in some graphical representation. So that is called as Gantt chart. It is some rectangle box. For example, in this scenario, I'm taking the Gantt chart for these 3 processes. So at the time of 0, P1 entered. So the execution time or burst time of P1 is 4. So at the time of 4, it completed its execution. So already when P1 is executing, P1 P2 came and P3 also came into the ready state. That means these two are ready to execute. So then after completion of P1, we are giving the chance to P2, because the first come first serve algorithm allows the process which came first. So after P1, P2 came. That's why we are giving the chance to the P2. So the burst time of P2 is 5. So it executes its burst time. So already the P1 executed for 4. 4 plus 5, the burst, it completed its task at 9. It completed its task at the time 9. So after that completion of P2, we are giving the chance to the P3. So the burst time of P3 is 10. So it started at 9 and completed 10 milliseconds. So the completion time of P3 is 19. So here the completion time of P1 is 4. The completion time of P2 is 9, and the completion time of P3 is 19. So this is the Gantt chart for the given problem. So now we have to calculate what is the turnaround time, what is the waiting time, and what is the response time. So for that purpose, I'm taking some table. So like this. So P1 is there, P2 is there, and P3 is there. So initially the arrival time. So I am using the notation AT for arrival time. The arrival time of P1 is 0, P2 is 3, and P4 is 4. So these are the arrival time. And the execution times are burst times. For this purpose, I am using the notation BT, burst time. So the burst time of P1 is 4, and the burst time of P2 is 5, and the burst time of P3 is 10. So this is the given, these parameters are given. Arrival time is given as well as burst times are also given. So now I have to calculate the completion time. So completion time of P1, P2, P3. So here the P1 is completed at 4. P1 is completed at 4, and P2 is completed at 9, and P3 is completed at 19. So this is the completion time of P1. This is the completion time of P2. This is the completion time of P3. Completion time means after execution is completed, it moved from run state to the terminated state. So that situation is called that situation or that time is called as completion time. Now we need to calculate the turnaround time. So the turnaround time is completion time minus arrival time. So already I have given the formulas. Yes. Yes. Turnaround time means you can calculate burst time plus waiting time. Suppose if you want to calculate the wait time first, so by adding the wait time to the burst time, you can get the turnaround time. Suppose or else you are having the completion time. So by subtracting arrival time from the completion time, also you can get the turnaround time. We will see both the criteria and both situations. First, I use this thing because already I have calculated the completing time. So for that purpose, I use the formula turnaround time equals to completion time minus arrival time. So here the completion time of P1 is 4 and the arrival time of P1 is 0. 4 minus 0, that is 4. So for that purpose, the turnaround time of P1 is 4 because completion time is 4 and arrival time is 0. 4 minus 0, that is 4. And coming to the P2, the completion time is 9 and the arrival time is 3. So 9 minus 3, that is 6 is the turnaround time. And coming to the P3, so that is 19 minus 4, that is 15. The turnaround time of P3 is 15. So these are the individual turnaround times of P1, P2, P3. So the formula to calculate turnaround time equals to completion time minus arrival time. So with the help of completion time minus arrival time, we can easily calculate the turnaround time of particular process. Suppose if you get the question like total turnaround time. So to answer this question, you have to add all these the turnaround times of turnaround time of P1, turnaround time of P2, turnaround time of P3. So this is 4 plus 6, 11, 11 plus 15. So that is 26. This is the total turnaround time. Suppose you may get the question, average turnaround time or average total turnaround time. So here we are having 3 processes and the total turnaround time is 26. So for the purpose, 26 by the total number of processes. So 26 by 3. So here you can get the average total turnaround time. So most of the cases you may get it in the floating point values or the fractional values. So no need to deduct the fraction value. So in the examinations also they mention the fractional point also. So this is about turnaround time. So coming to the first come first serve. So in the first come first serve, we give the priority to the process which came or which entered first into the ready queue. Here the P1 entered first, then for P2, then P3. So for the purpose, first we executed P1, then P2, P3. So this is the order. So to understand this one in the simple manner, we have the method that is called as Gantt chart. So Gantt chart means the graphical representation for the execution of the process. So here the P1 executed first and then chance given to the P2 and then chance given to the P3. So P1 executed from 0 to 4 because it arrived 0 and burst time is 4. So it completed its task. Even P2 came at the time of middle of the time of executing the P1. It does not enter into the running state or not allocated the CPU because it is the non-preemptive scheduling algorithm. FCFS is the non-preemptive scheduling algorithm. Now in the non-preemptive scheduling algorithm, until the completion of the execution of the one executing process, it does not allow another process to execute. For that purpose, after completion of P1 only, P2 entered. After completion of P2 only, P3 executed. So this is the Gantt chart. With this, we can understand this is the time of the entered of P1. This is the time of enter of the P2. This is the time of the enter of the P3. And this is the completion time of P1. This is the completion time of P2. And this is the completion time of P3. So with these things, completion times of P1, P2, P3, we can calculate easily the turnaround time. So the turnaround time equals to of the particular process is completion time of that particular process and the arrival time of that particular process. For example, P1 turnaround time, suppose if you want to calculate the P1 turnaround time, you need to take completion time of P1 and minus arrival time of P1. So with this, you can calculate the turnaround time. So like this, you can calculate for every process. After that, suppose if you want to calculate total turnaround time, so the formula is adding all the turnaround times of the particular process, you can get the total turnaround time. And to get the average, so you have to divide the total turnaround time with the total number of process. So this is the criteria to calculate the turnaround time. So what about waiting time? So here we have given the time for waiting time also. For waiting time, we have given the formula. So that is turnaround time minus burst time. So suppose if you want to calculate waiting time, so you have to subtract the turnaround time. Sorry, you have to subtract the burst time from the turnaround time. So I just clear this thing. So, thank you. Turn around time came. So suppose if you want to calculate waiting time means turnaround time minus burst time. Turnaround time is 4 for P1 and the burst time of P1 is 4. 4 minus 4, that is 0. Because P1, P2, P3, at the time of 0 it came, so on 4 it completed, and at the time it completed, at the time of 19 it completed. Here it does not waited any kind of time, so that is 0. And coming to the P2, so the turnaround time is 6 and the burst time is 5. So that means it waited for 1 second or 1 millisecond. That may be the measurement is not specific. So if the question is in the examination, suppose they mention the milliseconds like that, most of the cases they mention the milliseconds only, because the process time within a fraction of, within a second we can execute millions of instructions. Every process can execute millions of instructions. For that purpose, we use the thing million instructions per second, MIPS. So this is the kind of statement used for the process. So every process may execute million instructions per second. So for that purpose, in milliseconds only, we calculate all these most of the cases. If they mention, you just mention the that measurement also. You know, even though most of the cases we need to just choose the option A, B, or C like that only. No issues. And P3, the turnaround time is 15 and the burst time is 10. So 15 minus 10, that is 5. So the waiting time of P3 is 5. The waiting time of P1 is 1 and the waiting time of P1 is 0. So, sir, how can we recognize these are the curtain? So, for example, so P1 entered at the time of 3 because arrival time of P1 is 0, arrival time of P2 is I have given 3, and arrival time of P3 is I have given 4. So the entry time of P2 is 4, but at what time it entered into the ready queue 3. So 4 minus 3, that is 1. So you can like that also, you can check it. And here P3 entered into CPU at the time of 9 and it entered into the ready queue 4. So 9 minus 4, that is 5. So the waiting time of P3 is 5, sir. So like this also you can calculate, but no need to check all these things. So we simply use the formulas because those are the standard formulas only. By putting the values in the formula, you can easily get the things. So here also, suppose if you want to calculate the total waiting time, the total waiting time is 6 because 0 plus 1 plus 5. So average waiting time is by total number of process, that is 2. Average waiting time is 2. So this is the way to calculate the waiting time as well as turnaround time. So here the response time. So the response time means the response time of P0 is 0 and the response time of P0 is 0 and the response time of P2 is 1 and the response time of P3 is 5. Sir, the response time and waiting time is both are same? Yes. In the non-preemptive scheduling algorithms, the waiting time as well as the response time both are same, because here I have given the formula for the response time, that is the first time enter into the running state minus arrival time. So the first time enter into the running state is 0, arrival time is 0, 0 minus 0, that is 0. Okay, good. The first time enter into the running state is 4, but the arrival time is 3. 4 minus 3, that is 1. And the first time enter into the running state is 9 and the arrival time is 4. 9 minus 4, 5. So by using the formula you get the same values, or simply if it is non-preemptive scheduling algorithm, so the waiting time as well as the turnaround time, the waiting time and the response time both are same only. So this is the very simple algorithm and the uh, first algorithm we discussed from the scheduling. But here there is a small problem with FCFS, that is the convoy effect. We can call that one as convoy effect. We already hear about this word convoy. Convoy means a huge gathering. Suppose if there is a huge gathering is there, so there is no space to move on because that is blocked. So in that cases we call this one as convoy. In the same manner, if the large process is there, until completion of that first came large process, the remaining the small the processes which are having small burst times have to wait until completion of the large burst time having process which came first. The process came first and having the large burst time. Until completion of that, the processor does not allow in first come first serve scheduling algorithm other process to execute. So this kind of problem is called as convoy effect. So we can call it as also starvation or long time waiting. So this is the problem of the first come first serve. Here we use the criteria non-preemptive scheduling algorithm. Non-preemptive scheduling algorithm. So I will take the one more example and I will give the difference between convoy effect without convoy effect. So after that, I will move to the shortest job algorithm. Yes. There are processes P1, P2, P3, P4, for example. The arrival times are 0, 3, 2, and 5. And burst times are 5, 10, 50, 10, 4, 1. So this is the question has given. Here, the first came process having the large burst time. So for the purpose, until the completion of this, the remaining process don't get the response from the CPU. So this kind of situation is called as convoy effect. Convoy effect. So you may get a theoretical question like this. So in which scheduling algorithm will get the convoy effect? That is nothing but first come, first serve. So in the shortest job scheduling error also, you may get the convoy effect or this kind of effect. But the majorly the problem with the first come, first serve is it is having the problem that is called as convoy effect. So like this. So for example, here, if you take a Gantt chart, first at the time of 0, P1 came, so that complete its task at the time of 50. After that, so here the arrival time of 0, P1 came, and the arrival time of P2 is 3, and the arrival time of P3 is 2. So here, before P2, P3 entered. So we have to give the chance to P3 first compared to P1. Even though the ordering of the writing order is different. So here the arrival, we need to check the arrival time only. For that purpose, P3 came first compared to P2. So the next chance given to the P3. So P3 came and completes its task with a 4 burst time. That means 54, because 50 at the time of 50 it came, and within 4 milliseconds it completed its task. After that, compared to P2 and P4, so P2 came first, so give the chance to the P2 and it completes its task. So with 10 milliseconds, so that is 64. Then P4 that completes its task with 1, that is 61. So here P4 came at 5 and it finished or completed its task at 61. So the waiting time is more because of the convoy effect. So we will see it. So completion times. So the completion time of P1 is 50. Completion time of P2 is 64. Completion time of P2 is this one, sir, not this one. So 64. And completion time of P3 is 54. And completion time of P4 is 65. It is 65, sir. 64 plus 1, 65. So completion times came. So again, next, turn around time. So turn around time means completion time minus arrival time. So completion time means
Excuse me, sir.
Madam.
Only one student here. So can we stop myself and you and one more Ramya, she is here. If what is topic over, then we can close it.
After completion of this topic, I just want to finish, stop the lecture.
Okay.
Am I right, ma'am?
Okay, sir.
Yes, madam. Just within 5 minutes, ma'am. I will finish it. So here the turnaround times are completion time minus arrival time. That is 50 minus 0, that is 50. And completion time is 64 and arrival time is 3, that is 63. Sorry, 61. And here the completion time is 54 and arrival time is 2. That means 52. And here 65 minus 5, that is 60. So these are the turnaround times. And to finish that task, the time required for those processes. Suppose if you want to calculate the total turnaround time by adding all these things, you can get it. So to calculate the waiting time, so the waiting times are turnaround time minus burst time. So turnaround time is 50 and the burst time is 50, so that is 0. Turnaround time is 61 and burst time is 10, so that is 51. And 52 minus 4, that is 48. And 60 minus 1, 59. So these are the waiting times or responsive times. Here this P4 waited more time, as well as P3 also waited more time, and P2 also waited more time because of the large burst time of the first entered process. This kind of situation is called as convoy effect. Just I want to change the arrival times just within a second, within a minute I will finish. So the burst time of this one is 5. Sorry, arrival time of this one is 5. Arrival time of this one is 0. Arrival time of this one is 2, 3, 5. So like this. So first the arrived is P2 process. So the P4 process. P4 finished the work within a 1 second. So after completion of this one, so P3 came. P3 finished the task with 4. So that means 5. And the next P2, it finished the task with 10. So that means 15. And next P1, so it tasked with 50. So that is 65. Here it is 65 and here it is 65. So that the end of the process completion time is must be same. In any case, the arrival times are maybe different. So the total burst time, and suppose this one is the total burst time. So 50 plus 10, 60, 60 plus 4, 64, 64 plus 1, 65. So this is the thing. So here this value should be matched with by adding all the burst times of the process. Here the waiting time of P4 is P3 is 1. Here the waiting time of P4, P2 is maybe 5 or 5 minus 2, that may be a 3. And here the waiting time. So in this case the waiting times are more, but here in this case the waiting times are less. So because here the large process which came first, but here the small process which came first. So this is the difference. Without convoy effect, the waiting times are less. With the convoy effect, the waiting times are more. So this is the difficulty with the only difficulty with first come first serve. So this is the non-preemptive scheduling algorithm. To overcome this problem, so we can execute the shortest job first with the help of SJF algorithm. So thank you. I will continue the next classes from the shortest job algorithm. Thank you. If any doubts, please ask, sir. If anyone are having doubts, you can ask.
Okay, sir.
Okay, madam. Thank you.
I stop here.
Yes, ma'am. Yes,